direction of what they're doing about cattle mutilation. Now, when cows, the other cattle mutilations, when they're found and it's alien or something unknown, we find them on crags, underneath trees, where it's virtually impossible to get to these places. And yet these terrible things have happened to these cows. And again, too, there's, you say to yourself, how could you bring the equipment on up here to do this? Sometimes there's blood on the hide, very, very rare, but it's separated. The iron, the hemoglobin, is separated on the hide. In other words, a mistake was done, and there's some droplets there. So the vast majority of cows that have been, found and they've made an indentation into the ground, that has been done by the government. And then when the government, you say, well, for what purpose? Well, so that mainstream media is going to say, well, you know what, it's not, alien species or the Borg or the Klingons or, Pretzel 13. It's the government's just doing this. For example, up in Dulce, New Mexico, now there's some activity that's legit on up there, but what they've done is near for example, one cattle mutilation, within 20 yards of the dead carcass there's this NATO American gas mask. And it's left there to be found. Then by this other cow that's been mutilated on up there, they're going to find that metal aluminum strips, shaft, what you're going to drop to blind radar units. For a strike coming on, and you're going to put this up in the air. Do that. In other words, this is all American military hardware that they're leaving on out there, so that the mainstream media or the mediocre investigators are going to say, "Oh yeah, well we've solved that. It's the government, and they're doing something top secret." But the rest of this, no, we don't have the technology to do that. And just like with the missing that you had mentioned before, we don't have the technology to have a person step into the twilight zone and never come on out. And that's what we've got here. So a lot of books on out there and that are going to, and investigators say, oh, it's the government, it's this and that. That's pure nonsense.
Well, they do that also to debunk it. They try to debunk the UFO thing for a long time. Timothy Cullen is going to be back on my show here next week. Now, he was abducted. He had an implant. Dr. Roger Lear, I think he was number 13 patient, removed the implant out of his arm. Now, after he went through all that, he really got interested in abductions and all that stuff. He kind of got into, for a while, in cattle mutilation, where he would go out and investigate because it really got his interest up, after he was abducted. Now, one of the cases he went out and investigated was a farmer called him up and said, hey, this is my second cow. It's been mutilated. He goes out there, he checks on it. Now, the weird thing about this cow, it snowed on the ground. So the only footprints that was the cow. Again, no blood. The same type of thing, the tongue, the heart, the sex glands, and all this stuff removed. Totally drained of blood. But the head of the cow was in a gopher hole. Mm-hmm. So it was almost like maybe it was dropped, and that's where the head, landed into it. No, I do think the military at one point was trying to debunk it, because the reporting started coming out. The best way to do anything is then come out and try and make it look fake, if they can blow it off and tell the public, well, it's not true.
Well, yeah, that's on two things on that. Just what was it? A few years ago, there was another. This is a classic cattle mutilation, but it's got a twist on it, and I'll tell you about the American psyche and how sleight of hand. And this happened up by Diablo Canyon. That's going to be to the to the west of Santa Fe, and Devil's Canyon. All right, so this cow was found mutilated, and the thing about this, it had rained and rained and rained. but the hide of this cow, it's not wet, and there's no tracks around this cow. So the debunkers are going to say, well, it got hit by lightning. Well, no, it didn't get hit by lightning. But the county police were on out there, the state police were on out there, and so was 2 FBI agents. And you say to yourself, what would the FBI be doing with a cattle mutilation? Now, the story is the excuse as well, it's Indian reservation, and that's under federal jurisdiction. Well, I mean, it seems the FBI could be more interested in something else rather than a carcass of a cow, right? So what was that? Now, were they lying and it was something else and some other type of secret government, black ops and the same, covering, and it's not FBI? Who knows what? But as far as sleight of hand goes, that is in the American DNA. We're never ever going to get told the truth as far as what is going to happen. We're always doing that with our the wars that we fight. For example, the D-Day invasion. We're putting all this fake radio traffic that the Nazis are going to think that we're going to invade at the Pas de Calais. No, it doesn't happen there. We got a fake army there. We hit them at Normandy. Same thing with the end run that Schwarzkopf did there in Desert Storm. We're going to storm the beaches there, north of Kuwait. No, we went out into the desert and flanked them. When it comes to the government, we're and this goes back to again to one of the bad things about our educational system is from junior high through high school, they're going to try to turn you into adult so that you lose your analytical thinking, so that you'll become part of the sheeple and just accept what Big Brother has got to say. I mean, most people don't even know what their rights are underneath the U.S. Constitution. And so, I mean, going along with what Big Brother says, it's the government's doing something, and that's what happened to that cow. Or these missing people? No, there's nothing to it. They just ended on up falling down an old mine shaft, and that's where they're at.
Yeah, about 14,000 people just went down a mine shaft. Or, I always bring this one case up, and, I'm not the only one that brings it up. But, it was a case where, the parents went camping in a campground. And, the father was putting the tent up, and the mother was bringing out, the boxes out of the vehicle. Father was, keeping a constant eye on the kid. He was about 5 years old. But he took his eyes off maybe for a minute or so. The kid vanished. He was gone. So he spent time looking for his son. He couldn't find it. He goes to the park rangers. They go out, the next day pretty much and start, trying to find out where he went or what happened to him. Now, what is interesting, right there at the campground, there was a river. And all around that area, there's rivers and creeks. They found his body 15 miles away, up on the side of a mountain side. What they found was basically his clothes were kind of all folded up really nice, and his remains were pretty much bones in a pile. Now, that makes you wonder, okay, well, maybe somebody's weird, because there's no way a 5-year-old is going to be able to cross rivers, number one, without being swept down them. Number two is he's never going to climb up a mountain. Number three is in a day or 2 days' time, he's not going to go 15 miles out in the deep woods and end up on the side of a mountain.
Yeah. One of the things that is always, this is just a red flare about those kind of stories, is that when somebody is going through, death of overheating, then hypothermia, there's no way that you're going to take off your clothes and put them into a nice pile. You're just going to rip them on off because you're burning on up. And then to put them in a nice pile, that just does not make sense. And there's, when you find some of these bodies in areas that have already been searched, again, too, you say to yourself, well, just how incompetent were these searchers? Now, some of these searchers, okay, you can say, all right, they did a very bad job. But some of these searches for the missing have been done with professionals, all kinds of volunteers, tracking dogs, thermal sights, equipment, aerial, you name it, and they don't find the person, and then in extreme cases, when they do find the person, it's in an area that had already been searched, and there's no way that this person could have gotten through the dragnet of the searchers. I'll tell you this one story here that's very strange, and of course skeptics will say this, say that, but there's the area here to the east of Santa Fe, and the slang for it, the Pecos Triangle. There's an area where numerous people have disappeared, just like the Bermuda Triangle, and this one fellow disappeared last November, and maybe it was last September. And nevertheless, last year, his name was Stanley V. Hill, and Stanley. This is, this is fact. It's going to sound like a screenplay. Okay, so Stanley's in the back of this pickup truck. It's one of those cab-type pickup trucks. His uncle and cousins are next to him, driving up in front. It's hunting season. They're going down this dirt road, and he's got all of his clothing on for going on out there. They're putting on their overalls, etc. He says, "Hey, I just saw a buck." So he says, "Let me on out." So he gets out of the onto the dirt road. He says, "Well, we're going to go on up maybe another 110 yards, park the pickup truck. We'll finish put our clothing on, and go chase on after you." Fine. So they do that, and as they're starting to run back down the dirt road, they hear a gunshot, and then another gunshot. Okay, Stanley got his deer. So they go on over where he entered into the scrubland, into the trees. No Stanley. So they yell for him. Nothing there. They shoot off some rounds. They think they hear a round far, far away. They search for him. They can't find him. So some of them stay there. The other ones go back, get the ranger, get the state police. This massive hunt starts for him. And then 6 months later, they find his body in the Pecos River. And how this guy, Stanley V. Hill, he grew up in this area. And the people there in Pecos, they're going to be like the people you find in the panhandle of Oklahoma, Texas, West Texas. These are tough, tough people. And they can survive. They're throwback to cowboys. And they find him. And the thing about this is how this guy, it's impossible for him to get through the searchers and get to the area there where he's at. And if he had gone through the searchers, there's houses, there's roads, there's lights, there's cabins, there's all kinds of things that he could have gone to. Again, too, was he, how did he get into that river? It does not make sense. It's like about, I'm going to say 12 miles from where the spot of where he initially went missing. Now, that's just one person that went missing on up there. And then there's another story that's even more bizarre, because you don't find the body on this person. His name's Mel Nadel. Now, Mel was nobody's fool. And you can look this up on my website. I guess I should give my website's name on it. That's Santa Fe Ghost and HistoryTours.com. That's one word, no caps, Santa Fe Ghost and HistoryTours.com. And you're going to find all kinds of information about the missing and UFOs in this area, and about my tours as well. But, okay, Mel, he had a gym here in Santa Fe and a jewelry store. He was happily married, had a teenage daughter. He was nobody's fool. He was a black belt in karate. He kind of looked like Terry Hanratty, the old quarterback from Notre Dame, with a Ringo Starr type of haircut. And it's September, and two of his buddies say, "Let's go hunting." So they go on up there and into this area. And this road where they're at, it's called Elk Mountain. Now, Elk Mountain, that area, I always use this example, it's not the Himalayas. It's like northern Georgia, where every mile or so you got an open field, you've got cabins, you've got bicycle trails, roads. It's impossible to get lost in that area. That's the bottom line. So his two friends say, "Well, we're going to go looking for a game." And Mel says, "Well, I'm going to build a blind here," because they set up camp 20 to 40 yards off of Elk Mountain Road. They had their tents, etc. And you knock yourself on out. So he's going to build a blind.